At 14, Veronica Vanderhall is a rebellious high school student with an I don't care a frick attitude. She has the lowest marks in the class, frequently gets into conflicts with her pals, and never listens to her parents or professors. But this wasn't always how Veronica was. She was a bright, kind, and fun-loving child who excelled in her class up until a year ago. However, she made some new acquaintances over the summer break and became aware of environmental issues like deforestation and global warming. Veronica is currently an assertive vegan. Additionally, she instigates frequent demonstrations at her school against the use of plastic, animal products, and other things that she strongly opposes. Her antics have become tiresome for her parents, instructors, and classmates alike. But Veronica didn't give a damn. Whether the other students agree with her or not, she is determined to impose her beliefs on them. Sadly, she gets called into the principal's office one day and receives a lecture about her poor behavior and low marks. The principal suspends Veronica indefinitely since she is still not paying attention and is behaving clever. It's too late when the spoilt adolescent finally acknowledges the seriousness of the problem and attempts to apologize. The principal won't alter her decision since she has already made it. Veronica had to listen to her parents reprimand her once again later at home. They describe how, in the past year, she has undergone a total transformation and how, on sometimes, they feel as though their daughter has been abducted and replaced with an imposter. The parents also spoke about how Veronica used to go places, play games, and even cuddle up with them at night. She has changed into a shadow of her former self. Subsequently, Veronica's father unfolds a brochure promoting a particular establishment called Miss Genevieve's School for Difficult Girls, which seems to focus on correcting girls who exhibit dissimilarities in their social conduct. Put another way, this school excels at disciplining pampered females. After carefully reading the booklet, Veronica expresses her desire not to travel, yet, her parents help her see that she is not really in a position to make many decisions. They take their daughter to Miss Genevieve's School for Difficult Girls the next day by car. Miss Genevieve is the school's principal, and the main structure has the appearance of a Gothic castle. In addition, the youngsters all have the same unsettling haircut, giving the impression that they are not typical. After some time, Miss Genevieve visits Veronica's parents and promises them that their daughter would be disciplined and returned home in a few months. She also says that in her time here, she has straightened over 1,000 females. Regardless of how disobedient or conceited they may be, Miss Genevieve consistently manages to assist them. In the meantime, Veronica's mother at last questions why every girl in the school sports the identical haircut. Miss Genevieve responds with a frightening look, saying that the haircut is just an addition to their uniform, which stands for honesty, obedience, and simplicity. She claims that the girls arrive here drenched with harmful habits, and that the developing mind is like a sponge. She only needs to squeeze them a little bit. At that moment, Miss Genevieve introduces Heather Corbett, a female, as Veronica's housemate. Heather greets Mr. and Mrs. Vanderhall with grace, instantly winning them over, but not before whispering something in Miss Genevieve's ear. It appears that she has reported Veronica for chewing gum, which is not allowed at all on school property. Veronica displays her rebellious streak by sticking the gum to a nearby pole, despite Miss Genevieve pointing out the regulation and telling her to take it out. When Veronica's parents eventually leave, Heather shows her to their room. The room is dim and dismal, with just 2 beds, a table, and an alarm clock. Heather offers to assist, but is turned down politely while Veronica unpacks. She is subsequently chastised by Veronica for having earlier exposed her. Additionally, she requests that Heather end the performance because their eerie principal has left. To her astonishment, Heather clarifies that she is only abiding by the regulations and that she will do so until they are on school property. Disturbed by her actions, Veronica turns to her MP3 player to unwind and starts listening to music, but Heather gets in the way again. She informs Veronica that music is not permitted in this area and swiftly switches off the speaker. She also mentions that Mr. Welsh will be getting her a new haircut shortly before she leaves. Heather and the alarm clock combine to wake Veronica up at 5 in the morning the next day. She dresses in her school uniform while still drowsy and goes to the canteen, where the other girls are chatting and having breakfast. None of them are laughing or yelling as other girls their age would typically do, which is weird. They also give off the impression of being robots, being lifeless and boring. When Veronica goes to the counter to get some food in the interim, she discovers that they only have sausage and bacon. This implies that going forward, she will need to modify her vegan lifestyle. The action then shifts to the classroom, where David, a male history teacher, is describing several historical incidents in which kids defied their parents and suffered the consequences. It turns out that every class at this school is intended to instill obedience and civility in the pupils' minds. Since youngsters are immature and careless due to their age, Veronica believes the information to be completely incorrect and interrupts David. The class as a whole is astonished to hear this because it is the first time someone has contradicted their instructor. David, nevertheless, reassures them that Veronica will soon learn to be courteous. He also asks her why she hasn't had her hair cut before the lesson concludes. Not long later, Miss Genevieve calls Veronica to her office when she is meandering about the playground. As she arrives, she sees Mr. Welsh, the barber, waiting for her. Unexpectedly, he begins measuring her head and even inquires about her age, a question that is most definitely not necessary for a haircut. Mr. Welsh writes down every information and says he won't be able to schedule a haircut appointment until at least the next week because he would be quite busy in the coming days. But he gives in to Miss Genevieve's insistence, cancelling one appointment and promising to trim Veronica's hair the next day. By now, Veronica has begun to suspect that there is a serious problem with this institution. So, around midnight, as her flatmate sleeps, she gathers her things and gets ready to leave the school. She is stopped by Claire, a fellow student, as soon as she leaves the building, indicating that it is difficult to leave the area. The school is surrounded by electric gates, and numerous guards are always on patrol along the route. After saying hello to one another, Claire shows Veronica to her room. She then shows her the drawings of two previous pupils who, it seems, attempted to flee but were apprehended. Even though they had anticipated every move the guards would make, they were nonetheless apprehended. Following the disclosure, Claire informs Veronica that she is running out of time because her haircut is set for the following day. She asserts that the kids become lifeless automatons as a result of their haircut. Claire chooses to teach Veronica something because it's clear that she's perplexed by everything. After guiding her down a covert tunnel, they soon arrive at a chamber containing Miss Genevieve, Mr. Welsh, and another pupil. The pupil is restrained to a chair and she persistently inquires to be freed, but Miss Genevieve shows no signs of fear. "Don't worry, my child, you will be polite in no time," is all she says. Saying this, she gives Dr. Welsh, the barber, the order to start the procedure. He starts giving the restrained student a haircut and places an odd helmet on her head while she cries in terror. After some time, she changes both her behavior and hairdo. Just a short while ago, the girl was defiant, haughty, and impolite. Now, she is calm and courteous. Finally, Veronica, who is observing from a distance beside Claire, comprehends how the pupils are disciplined in this situation. Claire, however, discloses that a metal plate had to be inserted within her skull as a precaution after suffering a head fracture as a young kid. She told me that this plate prevented her from becoming another boring student after getting a haircut last year. Afterwards, during their ongoing conversation, Claire shares the reason behind her refusal to flee. She showed up at the school on the same day as her sister, but only she managed to stay sane. She now worries that Miss Genevieve may hurt her sister if she goes alone. After learning about everything, Veronica pledges to devise a strategy to free every pupil from the spell ensnaring them. She attempts to incite the pupils to be disobedient the next morning at the canteen by whistling, but Miss Genevieve chastises her for it. In the course of their talk, Veronica unintentionally discloses that she and Claire saw a fellow student get a haircut. Miss Genevieve becomes enraged by this and vows to transform Veronica for the better that night. A few hours later, Claire gets a brand new haircut when Veronica, terrified, runs to her room, the only place she has friends. It turns out that Miss Genevieve contacted Claire, took off the metal plate from her skull, and gave her a haircut after Veronica unintentionally divulged that they were spying on Mr. Welsh the other night. She is now lifeless and boring, just like the other pupils. This eliminates Veronica's lone chance of leaving the miserable school. Afterwards, she waits in her bed for Miss Genevieve to come take her away and alter her for all time. As she is doing this, Heather, her roommate, shows up and says they should head out as it is dinner time. But Veronica's not feeling well. Rather, she begins by reminiscing about her early years, when she was content and unconcerned about the state of the world. Subsequently, she inquires of Heather what it's like to have a sedentary and regimented existence, to which the latter responds predictably incomprehensibly. Veronica chooses to offer her flatmate a farewell present in spite of this. She pulls out her MP3 player and gives it to Heather, who remains silent the entire time. Some static sounds can be heard in the background, suggesting that Heather is attempting to access her memories from the past. Abruptly, a pop song begins to play as she clicks a button on the speaker. The music is causing Heather to experience tremendous agony in her ears, but eventually she stops. Her sanity and all of her pre-haircut memories have returned, which is surprising. She can't even recall how she got to this school, in actuality. Veronica is overjoyed that she has at last discovered a remedy to heal the ill pupils. As a result, she begins planning something with Heather right away. She eventually stops by Miss Genevieve's office and says she's ready for her haircut. Next, as the two make their way to Mr. Welsh's barber shop, Veronica continues to act rudely and disparage Miss Genevieve. She gives her flatmate a signal to start their plan at the same moment. The MP3 speaker is brought out by Heather, who is really in Miss Genevieve's office, and placed directly next to a microphone. She then switches on the speaker, and the same hit song from before begins to play loudly on all of the school's announcement systems. All of the pupils are first greatly impacted by the music, but eventually they start to exhibit their true personalities. After a year, Claire, who works in the canteen, makes up with her sister. The females all emerge on the playground in the last shot, yelling and enjoying themselves just as any other adolescent would. Miss Genevieve tries in vain to get them back into their rooms. Now that the enchantment has been lifted, the females are acting appropriately wild and carefree. As the film comes to a conclusion, Veronica, Heather, and Claire are among the kids running in the direction of the school's exit gate. And the story ends. Subscribe for more videos like this. Turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.